So in this video, we want to start setting up our add to cart functionality. And in order to do this, we need to set up our state to actually handle this part of that. So we need to add a new part to that Redux store. And in order to do this, we need to go through that process of adding our constants, our actions, and reducers. So this should all look familiar to you. And let's go ahead and just start this, and we will actually close that out in the next video. So let's start by adding our constants, and we'll go through this by adding in new constants. So we'll just do cart constants.js. So we'll create the cart constants, and in here we need to two constant. So we'll export those right away, and we'll just say const, and the two constants that we need are going to be cart add item and cart remove item. So we'll do cart add underscore item, and this is going to be set to the string value of this variable. So we'll throw that in there, and the next one is just going to be cart remove. So we'll just select that, control D, and we can get both of those, and we'll set that to remove. So we also want to set up our reducers. So we are just going to start repeating these motions, and for our reducers we only have one card reducers, but just to keep the convention of actually going and creating that file for each part of it, we'll just call this card reducers and make this in its own file. So let's just do reducers, and that's going to be card reducers.js, and in here the first thing, so the first thing we want to do is import our constant. So for now we'll just import the cart add item. So we'll do from constants, and we'll just go into cart constants, and we'll do the cart underscore add that underscore item. And now I can set up my reducer. So I want to export that right away, and I'm going to call this cart reducer, and that's going to be an arrow function. And for the state, I just want to pass in an array of objects. So we'll do cart items, and this will just be all the items in the cart. It will be the product detail, and for now we'll just set it to an empty array before we update it, and let's just pass in the action. So I will make that switch statement now. So we'll just do switch, and we'll pass in the action type action dot type. And after this, let's set up the default first, and then we'll actually prep the first case. So we'll do default, and this will just be returning the state. So the state object now for the first case, we'll just do cart add item. And what we need to do is we need to check if the product that we send back inside of action dot payload exists inside of our cart items array. So let's say we are updating our product. We just want to change the quantity. That item will be already in our cart, and we don't want to add in a new item. We just want to update the quantity. Now if that product doesn't exist, then we want to take in what's inside of action dot payload and add to it this way. So before we do this, we first need to check if that product exists. So let's create a variable called item, and this will just be item or action dot payload. So the payload will be the product, And then to actually find this, we are going to create another variable called exist item, and this will just be an object. So we are going to loop through cart items. We are going to use the find method, and this will return back an object or nothing. So we are just going to go into that state.cart items dot find, and as we are looping through this, we are going to use an arrow function here. As we are looping through this array, we are just going to check if x dot product matches what's inside of item dot product. So if it finds something, it will return back in object. If it doesn't, it's going to return nothing. So now we can use exist item. So we'll just do if exist item, then we'll do one thing here with the state. So we'll update the state one way, and if it does not, we'll just say and then we'll change this up. So let's start with our else statement first. So if it doesn't exist, we just want to return back the state. So we'll just use the spread operator and we'll return the original state. And for the car items, we'll just do cart items and we'll just return an array and we'll spread across the original array. So state dot cart items. And then we just want to add an item. So this will return our original state, our original car items, and it is just going to add in the new item into that array. Now if it does exist, we'll set return, and in here we are just going to use a spread operator again for the current state. But for the actual car items, we'll just do cart items, and in here what we want to do is we want uh, to start mapping through that state. So we are going to do state dot cart items dot map, and we are just going to loop through this array, and we want to find if a car item matches. So we want to find the one that actually matches the new item here, and we want to replace the matching item with a new item. So the new item is exist item. So we want to find the item that we found in here, and then we just want to update it. So we'll just do dot map, and we'll just make that x using the arrow function here, and that needs to be equal arrow function. And in here we'll just create some space. We'll just do x dot product. So that's the product id here. That's why we are using product. So if the product matches the exist item, which we know it does now, because that's why we are running this condition. So if it matches the exist item dot product, then what we want to do is just replace it with a new item. Now if it doesn't, then we just want to return x. So if it's not the product that we need to update, then we'll return back the original product. So that array will stay the same with that product. And if it doesn't, so if we find that new product that we want to update, then we'll just replace that with a new item that was in the payload, and we should just move this back right here. So I want to set that back so we know it's part of map right there. I will save this. Let's check our constants, and we need to get rid of this second or the first equals right there. So that's not correct. So there is our variable, and then we set that, and we want to go ahead and register cart reducer with our store. So let's go into store.js, and that's going to be, let's close our constants, our reducers, and that that is in store.js right here. So we want to import that. So we'll just do an import, and then we'll go dot forward slash reducers, and this will just be cart reducers. And from a cart reducer, we'll just import cart reducer. So that was the name of it, and down here we can add this to combine reducers. So we'll just say cart, and this will be cart reducer. So if I save this, we added the reducer. This cart should now be added to our state. So let's go ahead and look at that. So we will go into our front end, and in our Redux store, we have not really done much with it. But if we go to our state, we should now see the cart. We see cart items. It's an empty array, and we got that part prepared. So let's go ahead and actually start adding our actions. So in our actions folder, we are going to create a new file, and this is going to be called cart items. Cart actions. So cart action.js, and we need to make a few imports. So we'll first import Axios here. So instead of our constants right away, we'll just do Axios, and that needs to be Axios for the module name. So Axios, and now we can get our constants. So from dot constant, let's go into cart constant and import cart underscore add uh, underscore item, and that looks correct. And so we have our constant, we have Axios. We want to start creating our to cart action here. So we'll export it right away, and we'll call this add to cart, and this will also be an arrow function. So we'll just say equals, and we'll complete the arrow function first. And in here as a parameters, we want to add in ID and the quantity. So as we are updating it, we want to pass in the ID of the product and the quantity of how much we want that, or how much we want of that product. And after this arrow function, we also need to make this an async function. So in here, we'll just pass in dispatch, and we are going to use get state. And then we need to close this off with the arrow function. So the function inside of a function, and that make it async. And I also wanted to explain what get state is. So get state lets us get any part of this state. So it's kind of like use selector, where we can pull out the entire state. We can get a single product here. So it's kind of like use selector in a way, and it allows us to access this. So we'll need this when we are updating our local storage and actually loading data into our browser. So let's go ahead and first make an API call here to get some product data. So we'll set this to data. We'll destructure the return, and we'll use a wait, right? A wait here, and then we'll just set axios.get, and in here we just want to get the product data. So we are going to make an API call to an individual product. So we'll say API forward slash product. So product, and then forward slash, and we want to pass in the product ID. So the ID that we pass in right here, we just want to get back that product data. Now after this we just want to call dispatch. So we'll do dispatch, and in here we'll set the type. So the type is going to be going to be cart add item. So we'll just paste that in there. And for the payload, we want to actually update the state with the product data. So we'll set payload, and then that's going to be an entire object, and we will load in this return right here. So this data object from our API call to product, will start loading that in. So product, this will just be data dot underscore id. Then we can set our name dot name data dot name. Now we have our image, and that's going to be data dot image, data dot image, like that. And we have our price, and count in stock. So count in stock, that's data dot count in stock. And then for the quantity, we'll just set that to quantity. So we loaded that in. And remember, product is the ID. So when we trigger this dispatch, when we call this reducer, that's y inside of item right here, that payload is x dot product is the ID, and so is item dot product. So I just wanted to make sure you don't think that this is the object, that's the product ID. So now what we want to do is actually load this data into local storage. So when somebody goes shopping on our website, they can add some items to a cart. They can leave uh, our website and then come back and still see those items in their cart without ever having to actually create an account. So in local storage, if you don't know what this means, go into your console, go into application, and go into storage, and then local storage. You will see this key value pair stored right here. So if we add an item into local storage, so let's just say name, and then we'll just set this to any name like Dennis. This data right here will stay even when we leave our page. So when we replace it, this data will stay. So we are going to load in our card data in here, and then actually call this data later on and set it into our state every time. So let me just stop talking and show you what I mean. So just under this phase, we can set our local storage by saying load storage dot item set item. We need to pass in a key value pair in here. So we are just going to set cart items, and for the value we are going to use this get state function, and we are going to set this to the cart item. So we need to go into our store. We are going into cart. So we are getting this part. And remember, this is an object, and cart has cart items. So we are going into cart and then cart items. So dot cart items. And before we can actually set this, this needs to be a string value. So we can use JSON dot stringify. So we are going to stringify this, and then we are going to parse it. So we turn it into a string because local storage can only have key value pairs. So that's going to be set to a string as the value. And then once we actually want to get this data, we are just going to parse it and turn it back into an object. So let me clear this up. Let me save this and let's go into our store to actually get this data. So right now our data is in local storage and we want to actually load this into our state. So what we need to do is we need to pull this data from our local storage. We need to parse it because right now it's stringified. We need to parse it to turn it back into JavaScript object, and then we are going to load it directly into our initial state. So let's go ahead and pull this data. So we'll create a variable here and I'm going to call this cart items from storage. And right here we need to run a check here. So the first thing I want to do is go ahead and do local storage dot get item, and we use get item earlier. Now we can actually get that item with get item, and we want to get the key of cart items. So that's the key we are going after, and we first want to check if this actually exists, because if we don't have items, then we need to change something up. So let's go ahead and set this right here. So we'll set this condition, and to actually get this data we'll have to icon this json dot parse, and we'll throw in this local storage dot get item here. So we'll just write that out again, local storage dot get item, and we'll get the cart items. So if the items exist, go ahead and get the items and parse them, and that's going to be the return value. Now if these items don't exist, we'll write another condition and we'll set this to an empty array. So now we can get these cart items, we can add them to our state. So we'll just do cart and then we'll throw in the object right here. So that's going to be cart items, and we'll throw in what we got back from local storage. So that's it for now. In the next video, we'll actually start adding the add to cart functionality. So when we click add to cart here, this data will actually get loaded into local storage, and then we will actually start working with that cart.